Welcome back. And it has been touched down after 17 hours of an extraordinary journey at the end of 286 days of ordeal. NASA's astronaut Sunita Williams has finally returned to Earth. Aboard the SpaceX Dragon Freedom aircraft, she splashed down the Florida coast, marking a historic moment in space exploration. This happened at 3:27 Indian time when this Dragon spacecraft of SpaceX touched down, a moment we all eagerly awaited. Sunita Williams, as you can see, emerged smiling, waving, and feeling the Earth's gravity once again after spending 9 months in space. And in a beautiful surprise, she was greeted by a pod of dolphins, as you can see on the screens, making this moment even more unforgettable. It's in fact as if Mother Nature was herself saying, "Welcome home, Sunita." But now that all the euphoria has settled and everyone's very happy that Sunita's come back and she's come back safe, let's not forget the questions that come out from this 286-day ordeal that, mind you, was supposed to last only 8 days. Sunita Williams' return to Earth wasn't just a homecoming. It was a reminder of the risks of space exploration that exist to this date, especially when we send people up in space. The Boeing Starliner, which was meant to be a short test mission, kept her stranded in orbit for months due to technical failures. In the end, it was SpaceX that brought her back safely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you see the irony here. She was stranded by a private enterprise. In this case, it was the Boeing Starliner aircraft. And then she was brought back by another private enterprise, which is SpaceX's Dragon crew. So what does that mean for us? Or more specifically, what does that mean for ISRO? Now, our space organization, unlike NASA, has traditionally been a government-dominated group or agency. But in recent years, it has opened the doors to private industry through the Indian Space Policy of 2023. This is just following global trends of increasing privatization. India's space ambitions are growing, and therefore, to incorporate these space ambitions, roping in the private sector will be key. But to what extent? That is the debate. Listen into what India's rocket man Nambi Narayanan had to say.
It also shows the success of a private firm participating in this operation. So I think this is the way this is what we are going to learn from this experience. Our own Gaganyaan, when it takes off after 3 years from now, we may have similar difficulties or more than these difficulties, but we have to do something about it. And I want to make it clear that this kind of operations can be successful only with private participation. And even in China, you have private people associated with this. So right now we have now agreed and we are now bringing in the private participation. But there must be some kind of a censorship, because everybody comes and then says that, okay, we will do this, that and all. But I think this is something which we have to look into it.
Now, ISRO has a lot of critical missions lined up for it, and for any space follower, it is a massive time of great excitement. There's Gaganyaan, which is going up in space in 2025. That's a manned mission. There's if you can start from the beginning, there was also the Aditya L1 project, which is, of course, a mission to unlock the secrets of the sun. That's launching sometime in this year as well. After that, we have Mangalyaan 2, which is going to be India's giant leap towards Mars, which is planned in 2026. And then there's Chandrayaan 4, which is a bold leap at getting a lunar sample back from the moon. And that has been targeted in 2027. So from the sun to the moon to Mars, we have it all planned up. So it's exciting times ahead for ISRO, but while it maintains control over critical missions like Gaganyaan, it's increasingly partnering with private firms for manufacturing, technology development, and commercial space explorations. Should it then take a leaf out of NASA's playbook and go in for further private cooperation? That's the debate we have at this point, and we have three very important and very accomplished guests with me. Joining me, we have Shanmuga Subramanian, who's a space enthusiast. He's someone who helped NASA in finding the Vikram lander on the moon. So you have a clear case of private participation in India's space research explorations already. We are also being joined by Jijit Nidumari Ravi, who's a former scientist at ISRO, who was part of many GSLV launches and also the Chandrayaan-1 study. And we also have Dr. W. Selvamurthy, who's the Chancellor of Amity University in Chhattisgarh, but he's also been the former DG of DRDO. It's a pleasure having all of you gentlemen with me at this point. I'll start with you, Mr. Ravi. The big question that we have now is, now that we have seen how effectively SpaceX was utilized in bringing back something which NASA could not do for 9 months now, Do you think ISRO is ready for the kind of a collaboration with private partners the way, for instance, NASA has had with SpaceX?
Yeah, that's very much in the cards. Because if you look at compared to the NASA and SpaceX equation in the USA, in India, ISRO is now still a big player, a government player, and we have a smaller but more very effective private space agencies like this Agnikul and Pixel Dhruva Space, Bellatrix, Skyroot Aerospace, etc. So we have a kind of a slightly different ecosystem, but
Exactly.
these individual private players are innovators, and they are innovating in the area of material science, for example. Some others are innovating in the area of advanced rocket engines, and some of them have launch pads of their own, of course, in the premise of Sriharikota provided by ISRO. But definitely, we have an ecosystem of private partners, and ISRO, they themselves have seen that the importance of the private players collaborating with them. So definitely that is the way forward in what is happening in the US and in the different countries, spacefaring countries. So that's the same thing for India as well. And because the innovation comes from these private partners, and that ISRO also benefits a lot from that kind of a collaboration.
But this is, of course, a decision that is fraught with risk. Dr. Selvamurthy, you're someone who has been part of India's, with the DRDO, which is, of course, the champion of every indigenization effort of India for several decades now, much before Make It in India became a thing. This is an exercise fraught with risk because this is not just a basic public-private partnership we're looking at. This is a partnership which will be in charge of people's lives, especially when we send our Gaganyaan or the astronauts in the Gaganyaan into space at this point. To what are the pitfalls that we need to look forward to? Should we just get swept away by the idea that, yes, we need private players on board, we need the best of brains on board? Because at the end of the day, private players have very different interests, very different motives in terms of profit, in terms of commercial viability, compared to a government organization's interests.
Yes, Rishabh. If the space economy has to be fully harnessed, we need to go for public-private partnership. There is absolutely no other route because you need to build the horizontal capability. So you need private players, both in industry, entrepreneurship, and also in academia. Because you need academia to seed futuristic technologies, the futuristic missions planning, all that the academia will be looking at, not for what is required for today or next 5 years. So one side academia, the other side the industries, which include startups and the industries. Then you have the government, ISRO. So ISRO has built already the capability today, the core capability in terms of technologies, the technology prowessness has been demonstrated. So it has developed the space science and technology domain. So like from launch vehicle, starting from propulsion, control, guidance, navigation, payload integration, payload separation, all this, you require now the missions which you already enlisted requires a large number of people. It cannot ISRO alone with a limited number of scientists can do. So there is a compulsion to build this horizontal capability and capacity in terms of these missions to be accomplished in the timelines which you mentioned. So you need that. But when you are doing this, you must have the checkpoints, which one to be looking at the quality, if it is human rating to be done, if it is Gaganyaan mission. And if you have to put the safety for such missions, you need the government control as well. So ISRO will always be there in the loop in terms of looking at the Six Sigma and control, quality assurance, quality control for the system. But then the private players will be given areas where they should gradually mature enough to come into even in those sensitive issues. Because after all, whether you are a scientist in private industry or in ISRO, you are the same human being with the capabilities, what is available in both. But only the ecosystem and the practices and policies which you have in a government system and the private system need to be aligned in such a way that it will lead to that kind of rigorous safety issues or quality issues concerned, reliability issues. Because now ISRO has proven this. all over, if you look at PSLV missions, the success rate is tremendously high. So you have established a benchmark already available today. And ISRO can also do things at a cost-effective manner. So the second thing which they have already proven. But once you bring in the youngsters, the new startups, because you need components, subsystem, devices, which will go, materials. So you need a gamut of technologies you need to develop. So it cannot be ISRO alone can do that. So that is where the private players, but then the
Okay,
space
so which is
policy
why
our
you need to
Honorable Prime Minister has brought in just now
so you need to
in the
tap in
recent
you need
years.
to tap into the youth, especially when ISRO is genuinely looking for a giant leap in mankind here. Very well point made, Dr. Selva Murthy. Just small reminder, my name is Ritangshu. Rishabh is a very talented and enterprising director who's giving me his words of wisdom in my earpiece. But that's Rishabh. I am Ritangshu. Let me go across at this point also to one of these young people who are with us at this point here. Let me go across to Shanmuga Subramanian. Shanmuga, you are someone who helped find you've helped find NASA, helped NASA find the Vikram lander on the moon. If you can take off from that experience and tell us how ISRO can also use the abilities, the talents of people like you and other private players to also help them be a force multiplier.
Yeah, definitely. I think ISRO needs a lot more capabilities, I believe. And we have a lot of engineering graduates across different colleges spread across the country. So we can effectively utilize them and build a lot of companies, like new space companies over there. And we could be even like, who knows, like we can have good competitors even to SpaceX or Rocket Lab, because they are launching rockets day after day or weeks after week, like every week they're having 2 or 3 launches. I certainly believe there is a lot of scope for private public partnership over there. And I think there is a lot more opportunities for the private companies out there. And those private companies might generate a lot of jobs in the space industry itself. This is not only with respect to like whether it's launching Gaganyaan or let us say launching
So,
PSLVs or
Shanmuga
making
Subramaniam, let's talk
PSLVs like
specifics. What are 3 or 4 areas where a private company, a startup like, say, an Anukul or a startup like Bellatrix Aviation can help ISRO?
So 3 or 4 major focus areas would be like one is from satellite perspective, we can do a lot of remote sensing. So we can build satellites for remote sensing, GIS, all those stuff out there. Whereas if it's specific to, let us say, launching rockets, then we have engineering graduates in aeronautical or mechanical engineer who can be a part of engineers for building rockets, specific rockets like 2-stage or 3-stage rockets. Let us say like something like similar to PSLV or SSLV, we can build it even in the private space itself. So these are the specifics I would say. But I think we need a lot more investment in that area, because right now there are a couple of companies like Dhruv Space and others over there. But I think we need a lot more companies
Okay.
with heavy investment in that area to further nourish it in India itself, I would say so. But as far as the scope is concerned, I think I see a
Mr.
good, great future for anyone out there if there is proper investment and with proper guidance from the government as well as from ISRO. I think we can even overtake US or China in that area itself, I would say so.
Okay, I'm really enjoying the sense of optimism that we have in this panel. But as part of my role, I have to be the cynic perhaps and be the skeptic also. Mr. Ravi, the one thing which has kept ISRO apart from most normal stereotypical government organizations is how it has worked as a model of efficiency and accountability at the same time. Let's not forget what led Sunita be stuck in space for 286 days, how Boeing, the Starliner aircraft, let down Sunita and her crew. There were problems in terms of the helium leaks in the propulsion system. There were multiple malfunctions that were reported in the thruster system as well. Tomorrow, if something goes wrong on behalf of a private company for, say, the Gaganyaan mission, and we have our own citizens, our own space astronauts stranded in thousands and thousands of kilometers away from Earth, where does the accountability lie in that picture?
Yeah. So this is a kind of a possibility, and many people use the word stranded here, but what NASA clarified is that the astronauts are actually prepared for this kind of an eventuality, And in case of Sunita, it turns out to be a little positive. Like she has stayed around 608 days as a second longest stay in the space. But coming to India, yeah, this is a kind of possibility that each of these Gaganyaan crew, they need to get trained on this kind of possibilities. But of course, our the first mission is actually a 3-day mission, so it's a very less compared to what is happening with Sunita or anything anybody, because this is not an ISS or an International Space Station mission, but that is what we are having currently. So immediately that what we have is a very planned and very well-defined 3-day mission. But of course, we will have our own space stations, and we will actually encounter this kind of a scenario. So redundancy is another important thing that I think a little bit Boeing have avoided. I mean, they have a little bit not considered much of the redundancy, but actually, when I was in ISRO, they were put a lot of importance to the multiple redundancy. So one system fails, then there are other systems to compensate for that. So maybe that kind of a philosophy that ISRO use probably help us to address certain unavoidable failures. But having said that, training the astronauts about this kind of eventualities. So I'm not talking about the Gaganyaan mission, which is a 3-day mission. So it's like inevitable that it should complete in 3 days. But in future, when we have Bharatiya Antarikshyaan, so we will have a similar situations like ISS. And definitely this all this what happened with Sunita and the other crew members is a big lesson for all the astronauts.
So these are lessons, ISRO, I'm sure, which even ISRO is learning from what happened with NASA. Dr. Selvamurthy, very quickly, since we just have a minute on the show, from your lessons as former DG of DRDO, what are the lessons ISRO should have? Because DRDO and HAL, for instance, got into a lot of problems when it comes to India's defense equipment while dealing with private players. Is there any specific red line if you would say that ISRO must keep in mind while it tries to engage with private players?
So the first thing is the capability mapping has to be done with regard to the industry you are going to partner with, because this is very important, how much they can do in real terms. The second thing is, what are the accountability which you can build in the contract when you are looking at the contract being given to the private player. So we should have the policies for a very systematic approach to selection of the private industry, and also building the accountability and monitoring, rigorous reviews and monitorings, so that the standards which you have set for your subsystem or a component or a device or a system, so it should meet that. So there must be a rigorous review. So it cannot be left alone only to that industry. At every, maybe at some point, you need to look at the milestones and the proper quality assessment, and the accountability has to be there with the private industry. That is growing now, because our industry, including startups, they are already developing that culture. So I'm sure it will be, we will succeed in opening up many private players coming in, and they will also look at business.
And I'm sure
so that is where you should look at.
I'm sure if there's one organization which can. I'm sure if there's one organization which can really do it successfully, it has been ISRO. It has already shown to the rest of the world and, of course, to the country that it can accomplish something which the world thinks it's impossible. I'm sure our bright minds are all learning from what happened with NASA, and we will incorporate them. And hopefully, in the next few years, our scientists and our astronauts will do the country and the world proud. Thank you so much, Dr. W. Selvamurthy. Also, thank you, Jijit Nadumari Ravi, and also Shanmuga Subramanian for joining me on a debate which me, as someone who wanted to be an astronaut before reality dawned and became a journalist, is something which is personally quite enriching. Thank you so much for joining.